My name's Garett Reppenhagen. I served as a scout, 19 Delta, with 263 Armored Battalion, 1st Infantry Division, out of Vilseck, Germany. I deployed with the scouts to Kosovo for 9 months on a peacekeeping mission, and to Iraq for a year between February 04 to February 05 in OAF-2. I was stationed in and around Bakuba at a forward observation base called Skunyan, right across the street from Warhorse. Bakuba is about 35 miles northeast of Baghdad, and it's within the Sunni Triangle. My experience in Kosovo with my fellow scouts, we learned very well how to operate with strict rules of engagement. It was a peacekeeping mission, stability and support, and we operated for those 9 months under those premises, basically as cops with a little bit more leniency on ability of use of force. So when I got back to Germany, I went to train at the International Interdiction Course in Stettin, Germany. It's a NATO-operated, basically special forces training where we hurried through sort of sniper training. And I became a scout sniper for the U.S. Army. We operated in that time before going to Iraq. We did a lot of classrooms in a classroom setting about rules of engagement, about Geneva Conventions, about how to operate in an environment of war. These things we already knew, but they were reinforced, and we had many new soldiers that need to catch up. We also trained in the field, basically role-playing situations on what to do, what not to do, and how to use force properly. I found when I got to Iraq in February that many of that was thrown out the window. My first mission was a right seat ride with the unit that we were replacing. We had half of our men and half of their men go out, and they got to show us the sector that we were going to operate in for the next year. At the time, there was a curfew in operation where Iraqis were not supposed to be outside of their houses after dark. We rolled around our sector, and eventually we came upon 2 men that were in the field. They were out after curfew, and they were not U.S. military or coalition forces. The men on the gun basically proceeded to open fire on these men, killing both of them where they stood. After the firing was through, we got off the trucks and we moved out to the location of where the bodies were. Half the men remained with the trucks and guarded them and stayed on the guns and overwatched our movement. The rest of us went out to check. They were using 50 caliber machine guns, which is basically what was already described, almost salt shaker sized rounds flying out of this fully automatic weapon that's accurate range is almost about 2,000 meters. Mark 19 fully automated belt-fed grenade launchers where you hold the butterfly down and grenades fly out the other end. These weapons' primary use is for basically anti-vehicle weapons. In our rules of engagement that we just learned a month prior, we were not supposed to use these weapons on civilian enemy. Once we got to these men, they were blown into pieces. There was no sign of any sort of weapons, any sort of anything upon them. I was told by the sergeant, scout, that we were replacing, that these men were out in their fields farming because the periodic electricity in their town, the pumps that irrigated their fields only operated while they had electricity, which meant to farm their fields, sometimes they had to go out into the dark, knowingly risking the curfew to farm their fields. I asked the sergeant why did he fire upon these men if he knew that they were farming in their field, after he explained to me why they were there. And he told me because they were out after curfew. This was my sudden shock to realize that what I had just learned about rules of engagement were rapidly changing. I never got another rules of engagement briefing while I was in Iraq for that year. I was never updated on what changed or who I was able to shoot at. We just basically changed them ourselves. It was very slow at first as we kind of eased into it. We learned to push the envelope a little bit at a time. And basically we learned that, oh, we didn't get in trouble for that? Well, let's try this. By the time I left Iraq, it was pretty much fair game to shoot at anybody that we thought was a threat. I was not surprised to see that many of these went unreported, and when they were reported on, most of the documents and the reports that were signed by service members who witnessed these events were basically falsified, or people that did see these events happen said they didn't see it. It's very difficult in a combat environment to work alongside the men and women that are saving you every single day and watching your back, to tattle on them when an accident happens. Much more so when the definitions of an atrocity is so blurred in a combat environment. One time,